The 2020 NBA draft class came into the league with a lot of mixed reviews. At the time it went down, the common belief was that it was actually a bit of a down year in terms of the talent that the class had compared to others. But now a few years later, with the power of hindsight, we can see how that belief could not have been further from the truth. There was all-star talent at the top, sneaky gems found later on, and a ton of solid role players throughout. And while some teams found those gems, others came away regretting the decisions that they made at the time, which brings us to today's video. Today we'll be going back through the top 10 of this draft, and we'll be redrafting the 2020 NBA draft based on what we know now about these players and teams. Before we start though, it turns out a good amount of you watching right now aren't even subscribed to the channel, so if you enjoy the content, consider hitting the subscribe button, as not only does it help out a ton, but also very much appreciate it. Now with that being said, let's begin. Starting things off with the number 1 pick in the draft, the Minnesota Timberwolves still select Anthony Edwards. Edwards came into the NBA as a pure scorer with an NBA-ready body and explosive athleticism. His biggest concern was just that he needed to learn how to play more under control at times and reel in his shot selection. His ability to score the basketball was never a question. And he was visibly built to handle the physicality of the NBA, so 3 years later, the Timberwolves have zero regrets with how they fared back in 2020. Edwards has gotten better and better in each of his first 3 seasons. He was named an All-Star for the first of likely many times this past season. His scoring and efficiency numbers have improved in each of his first 3 seasons, and now he's taking control of Team USA at the FIBA World Cup, showing that he's maturing and becoming more of a leader on top of all of that. Next, with the second pick in the draft, the Golden State Warriors select Tyrese Haliburton. The Warriors originally selected James Wiseman here, and 3 years later, that selection has proven to be a failure as he never developed how scouts believed he could, and the Warriors ended up trading him for pennies on the dollar to Detroit. Meanwhile, Haliburton would have been a perfect fit in Golden State. Haliburton is becoming one of the best point guards in the entire NBA already, and also just got named to his first All-Star team. He puts up over 20 points and 10 assists per game, he's shot over 40% from 3 every single season, he's completely selfless, looking to make the right play for either himself or for those around him, and in Golden State's motion offense, he would have thrived, setting up the elite shooters that would have been around him in this situation. Up next, with the third pick in the draft, the Charlotte Hornets still select LaMelo Ball. As it turns out, in a redraft, LaMelo Ball still falls to Charlotte, and they would not pass up on the opportunity to run it back, picking him all over again. LaMelo came into the NBA with people worried about whether or not his perimeter shooting would translate to the NBA, because he had a fairly inconsistent shooting season in Australia before being drafted. But in his first 3 seasons, he's shot 38% from 3 combined, which is well above league average, and because he maintains that level of efficiency on such a high volume of attempts from deep, it keeps defenses on their toes and allows the other parts of his game that he excels at to shine even more. LaMelo has outstanding court vision and is one of the best passers in the league right now. He plays a fun brand of basketball that provides entertainment and excitement, and he does need to improve defensively, but he's still definitely an all-star caliber guard. Next, with the 4th pick, the Chicago Bulls select Tyrese Maxey. The Bulls originally took Patrick Williams here, so they're a team that would love a do-over in a talented draft class like this, and Maxey's upside, continual improvement, and overall talent would be way too hard to pass up on here. Maxey was originally taken at the end of the first round because he's a bit undersized and his jumper was actually pretty inconsistent in college for a scoring guard. It's actually kind of crazy thinking back to those scouting reports, because now Maxey is one of the best shooters in the entire NBA. Maxey's another player who has improved drastically every season. He's coming off of a year where he scored over 20 points per game, he's shot 43% from 3 in back-to-back seasons, which ranks near the top of the whole league, and he's a blur in transition with unbelievable speed. Everyone around him speaks about how he's such a hard worker, which I think is backed up by the fact that he turned his jumper from a liability into a lethal weapon. And it's not unreasonable to see all-star upside in him as well. Next, with the 5th pick, the Cleveland Cavaliers select Desmond Bane. The Cavaliers originally took Isaac Okoro here, so they're another team that would love a redo. Sticking with the idea of them looking for a wing player that would be a much better fit into what they're trying to build, Bane has exceeded all expectations in his time in the league so far. As a prospect, Bane was viewed as a three-point specialist, and honestly not much more. Now though, Bane is still absolutely a lights-out shooter, having shot at least 41% from three in each of his first 3 seasons, but now he's also a much more balanced scoring threat. He's coming off of a season where he scored 22 points per game as the Grizzlies' number 2 option. He's much better at creating his own shot off the dribble and getting to the cup than originally anticipated, and he's also a solid perimeter defender, so at this point he's one of the more underrated players in the league. Next, with the 6th pick, the Atlanta Hawks select Jaden McDaniels. The Hawks originally selected Onyeka Okongwu here, and while I am a big fan of Okongwu's game, I think McDaniels fits much more into what the Hawks are in need of. The Hawks have been one of the worst defenses in the league over the last 3 seasons, so bringing in McDaniels, who is one of the best, most versatile, and most impactful defenders in the NBA right now, would be wise for them. McDaniels is another player who originally went at the end of the first round, but now in Minnesota, he's becoming a gem in their front court, and would be in the same for Atlanta, as a team who are in desperate need of it. He can defend multiple different positions, he rotates well, he generates turnovers, and offensively, he's also becoming a reliable 3-point shooter and secondary scorer that doesn't necessarily need the ball in his hands, which is fine when playing alongside Trae Young. Next, with the 7th pick, the Detroit Pistons select Onyeka Okongwu. The Pistons originally selected Killian Hayes here, but the combination of how Hayes just hasn't panned out, along with the Pistons eventually landing Cade Cunningham and Jaden Ivey, allows them to look to better solidify their front court, and I think Okongwu would be a fantastic fit for them. Okongwu has been compared to Bam Adebayo because of his ability to defensively protect the rim at a high level and switch out onto the perimeter players when he needs to and hold his own, and in Detroit, he would have had way more chances at playing time to develop instead of being stuck behind Clint Capella on the depth chart like he's been in Atlanta. Up next, with the 8th pick, the New York Knicks select Devin Vassell. The Knicks have done well over the last 3 years to build a playoff team, but even now, the small forward position is one where they could still use more depth. They originally drafted Obi Toppin here, but this offseason they just traded him away for a couple of second-round picks, so obviously they would have rather found a long-term replacement to a big positional need, which Vassell easily could have been for them. Vassell was originally viewed as a 3-and-D player during the draft, but in San Antonio so far, he has taken big strides forward across the board. He's a 39% shooter from 3 on solid volume of attempts, but he's also much craftier with the ball in his hands and can create his own shot off the dribble on his way to 19 points per game. Doing that while capably defending the opposing team's best players would be the exact kind of help that the Knicks have needed. Next, with the 9th pick, the Washington Wizards select Immanuel Quickley. The Wizards originally took Deni Avdija here, but Quickley has emerged as one of the best 6th men in the NBA recently, and he earned a bigger role this season because of how he was able to immediately spark the offense when he came into games. He's a reliable 15-point per game scorer who could see an even bigger improvement there with more freedom, which he would have on a now rebuilding Washington team. Learning behind Bradley Beal would also have benefited him greatly for a few years, and now that Beal is gone, he could have stepped into a lead role for their future. And finally, with the 10th pick, the Phoenix Suns select James Wiseman. The Suns originally took Jalen Smith here, which was viewed as a huge reach at the time and has proven to be a flop of a selection, so if the Suns really wanted to swing on upside at one of the big men positions, then this would be a decent landing spot for Wiseman. Wiseman, as I said earlier in the video, has the size and physical tools that teams love to try to develop. He just needs more time to actually learn the game. Being able to come into a situation with less pressure on him than there was in Golden State while starting off behind DeAndre Ayton on the depth chart would have done a lot more good for his career because the expectations placed on him were definitely way too high back in 2020. And with that being said, that's all I have for you today. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below who you would want your team to take in a redraft. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.